for who is giving our presentation, Jonathan. We met Jonathan the month before this pandemic started. He came in and visited me in my office, wanting to know about the Better Business Bureau and how we could partner with Steady Networks. And he signed up with us a month before the pandemic. I think, Jonathan, I think you've met a lot of folks in the last year and a half. I think you've made a lot of new clients in the last year and a half. I'm excited that, you know, Jonathan, I think this is the 4th time that he's done a presentation with us. And what I like the best of his presentations is that he talks in layman's terms. And when he talks about cybersecurity, I can understand that. So if I can understand it, everybody can understand it. So please join me in welcoming Jonathan, the CEO from Steady Networks. Thank you for being here again, Jonathan.
So Cybersecurity Awareness Month is this month, and the Better Business Bureau was kind enough to ask me to come and speak a little bit about some of my thoughts on securing the keys of the castle, your digital information, how to keep it secure. I always like to start with this concept that hackers don't break in, they log in, and we're going to talk about what that means and why the old image of the guy huddling in the basement is not quite accurate. They're not just using brute force, they're using your information to get logged in. And so we're going to talk about how to prevent that. So cyber defense is the topic. We're going to go through some items in the news, talk about a few statistics, things that we're seeing, trends we're seeing. We're going to then give you some recommendations, some real action items that you can take home. Recommendations, I'm going to try to put them in order of the most impact for the lowest cost, the most bang for your buck. And some of those recommendations are going to be backups, multi-factor authentication, password management, patching and updating, antivirus, and cyber insurance, and phishing prevention. The list goes on and on. This is not everything that you can do, but this will get you started on some critical first steps. And then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So any questions, feel free to post them anytime, and we'll try to get to everything. So some latest examples. These are headlines from this week. Ransomware attack hits the owner of dozens of local news stations. Sinclair Broadcasting, a big nationwide broadcaster, they were attacked. And I wanted to highlight particularly the last sentence there, which is that some data was stolen. This is a trend that we're starting to see more and more often, is exfiltration of data as after these attacks. So there's new threats emerging all the time. A few years ago, we would just see ransomware. Now we're seeing if they get into your system, they're going to take your data and try to manipulate you and try to extract more money essentially through that process. Another example, Olympus suffered a second cyber attack in 2021. A reminder that just because lightning struck once doesn't mean it's not going to strike twice. In fact, we see that being vulnerable to a first cyber attack actually increases the likelihood of a second attack. So there's a lot you need to do to secure your network after you've been the victim of an attack. Another headline, Buffalo public schools did not pay ransom and still had to pay nearly $10 million in restoration fees. So recovering from a ransomware attack can be very expensive. So definitely better to not be the victim. We're going to keep talking about what you can do to protect yourself from that. And then ransomware hackers find vulnerable targeted grain supply. Couple of lessons to be taken from this. One, you don't have to be a sexy software company to be the target. You can be something as boring and mundane, no offense to grain supply chain operators, but everyone could be a victim. Everyone is part of this attack surface. So trends, Verizon does a great cybersecurity analysis every couple of years and puts it out. You can find it on the web, and it's free to download. And they have some really interesting findings from the past few years. You can see this steady upward trend of financial incentive, especially as the cost of Bitcoin has gone up, which is the primary currency for hackers. the incentive has only grown for attacks. Some things that are changing, the threat vector, this purple line and this blue line, you can see kind of diverging. Regular basic web application attacks are going down. Those are things that are typically coming through ads, malware ads, and I think some of the security of those has gotten better. At the same time, social engineering is just going through the roof, and they're finding that it's much easier to trick you into giving up your email address and password than it is to use other methods of malware. So social engineering as a tactic to sort of kick off the bad action is going steadily upwards, especially as misinformation propagates on the internet faster and faster. So going through a few definitions, so we're all on the same page. Hacking is the gaining of unauthorized access to data in a system or a computer. Social attack, social engineering, this term that we're going to use, it's the idea of using deception and manipulate individuals into divulging their confidential or personal information. And malware is any kind of virus, worm, ransomware, all of these are just different types of malware. Phishing is the now probably familiar attack where they send an email and try to, that surprised me.
Sorry.
Where they're trying to entice users to click on a malicious link or install malware on a computer. But email being the source of that attack is typically called phishing. And then pretexting is a somewhat newer, more increasingly common type of attack where they create a false narrative to obtain information and usually include some dialogue back and forth, trying to get you out of one channel of communication into another. I'm going to give some examples of that. One more headline, which is over half of ransomware victims pay the ransom. Only a quarter see their full data return. This is according to a study by Kaspersky from earlier this year. So it leads us to our first question: why are people paying for ransom? What the incentive shouldn't be there for them to pay. So keep going. And reason number one is that they have no backups. Really common, probably the number one reason is that they have no backups. They have no alternative. They feel like the value of the data is worth the ransom and they pay the ransom. Reason number two is that their backups failed, which is essentially the same as having no backups, except that you think you have backups. So we're going to talk about some strategies in a second to have more confidence that your backups are running. And then reason number three is that backups take too long to recover. The backups are there, they're functioning as proper, but it's determined that the cost of the downtime exceeds the cost of the ransom. And that's what happened with Colonial Pipeline earlier this year. So a quick little bit on backup management. The number one rule: no backup system is set it and forget it. It takes some attention and some detail work to make sure that it's functioning properly. Servers in particular, if you have a business with servers in it, and it's not just a couple of desktop computers, they require a backup system, not just a backup program. And when I say a backup system, what I mean is they need daily verification. They need to have some kind of feedback. This is just a snapshot of one of the tools that we use, which tells us the latest screenshot happened 13 hours ago in this example. The last offsite sync happened 4 hours ago. The last local backup, we can see how many of the last 10 backup attempts were successful. In addition, we have a written plan describing the recovery process. So again, these are all the pieces of a robust backup system and backup management that will ensure that you're not going to get caught having a backup and then not being able to rely on it when the time comes that you need it the most. An annual test is another important piece. We often call this a fire drill. And the idea is that we've got the backup. We think it looks like it's working. Let's put it into play. Let's take the system offline and see if we can recover a file. Let's see if we can log in. Just a couple of quick tests will verify that it's functioning and that you have the muscle memory to use the backup if you need to. OneDrive and Google Drive I mentioned. I get a lot of questions about these tools. If you're a small business and you've just got 1 or 2 computers, these are perfectly good solutions to set up. You want to, again, do the same kind of testing and verification, but they can be inexpensive solutions for small businesses. Dropbox is another one I get a lot of questions about. I used to have I had seen in the past ransomware attacks that were not recoverable from Dropbox, but it's gotten better. And I think that it's from what I understand, it's a secure system now. And this is a picture of what restoring a file on OneDrive would look like, where you get to pick a date and time. And if you get a ransomware attack, you can then go back in time and restore from that backup. Okay. Any questions on that? Go ahead and put them in the comments. Recommendation number 2 is multi-factor authentication. So this requires a quick detour to phishing. So we're going to dig into phishing, and we're going to come back to why multi-factor authentication is such a great killer app for phishing attacks. So we'll go back to these stats. And again, from this 2021 report, phishing far and away 80% of these social varieties of attacks are phishing. The next highest one is pretexting. Why is phishing such a great tactic? Let's talk about that. 94% of attacks begin with email. And that came from a report, a cybersecurity report from just a couple of years ago. And the reason for that is that you can think of your data, all of your cyber and digital data. Go ahead. And those include your internal documents. Those include your client data. That include your client personal identifiable, your employee personal identifiable information. This includes the crown jewels, all of those, anything that you are trying to protect. We'll consider those to be protected by your firewall and your physical security, the locks on the doors. If you've got a server, that you're going to protect all those things. But every day we have to use email, and that email essentially is opening this drawbridge to your castle and allowing in communications. It's letting others inside that world that you've created, and you have to do that because we've got customers that we have to communicate. We have vendors we have to communicate with, and we have employees that we have to communicate. So we can't just completely lock ourselves out in a secure dungeon. So how do we protect ourselves, knowing that we have to allow those avenues in? And if you need to unplug this, you can.
This one?
Yeah. So who's clicking on these emails? We allow them into our system. And only about 3% is the median click rate for phishing attacks. And that seems like a small number, but when the incentives are as high as thousands, tens of thousands, or millions of dollars of ransom that can be collected, the incentive becomes really high to send out tens and hundreds and millions of emails, phishing attacks every single day. So even at that small click rate, it can have massive impacts on a small business. The anatomy of a phishing attack, again, starts with an email. Email comes in. The user receives that email. It's got a malicious attachment or an infected link. If they fall for it, the attacker may use a fake site or malware to collect user credentials to try to get you to type in your email address and password. And then we're off to the races. Now they can push out malware to encrypt your local data, or use your email address and password to hide out inside your email and wait for an opportunity to extract funds. So these are my 3 rules of phishing identification. Number 1, where is the email coming from? Number 2, where is the email really coming from? And number 3, where is this email sending me to? Let's walk through a few examples so you can see what that looks like. All right, so here's an example from my own inbox. If you notice, it's coming from admin Hopefully you can see that. That's who it's coming from. Who's it really coming from? Well, now I can see it's actually coming from news@thisiskolossal.com. That's my first tip off. I got to rule number 2, and I already have a notion that this is phishing attempt. I should just delete it, move on with my life. If I hover over that keep your password now, where it's trying to get me to click and type in my username and password, you can see I blew it up. It says radio urbana102.com.ar. That is not Microsoft. That is not anything to do with IT support. That is a scam. And so that's where it's sending me to. So if you think about who is it from, who's it really from, and where is it sending me to, I know I can delete this email. Here's another one asking for a payment receipt. And if you look closely, it's not trying to get me to click a link. It's got lots of other strange information in there that I don't know what to do with, but it's asking me to make a phone call. So I got curious and I tried to call this number. It was no longer working by the time I did this test, but I did a little research and go ahead. And I found this online where someone did call on this same scam and they were being asked to cancel they were trying to cancel this charge that they believed they were incurring. This is pretexting. It's taken us out of the channel of communication of email and now getting into the physical world of phone calls. What they did was they tried to log into her computer. She actually let them log into their computer, and then they tried to ask her to get into a bank account. That's what was the tip off for her, that she needed to get out of this. But we don't even want to engage with this kind of thing. Where is this sending me to? A phone number, then they want to log into your computer. Very important notion that we need to get out. Here's another one, security info update. Who is it coming from? It says email administrator. Who is it really from? It's coming from ma.c.ik, something like that. I definitely don't know who that is. Who is it coming from? They passed that test. Who is it really from? Failed that test. Where is it sending me to? You hover over that link. I blew it up here. fant.s3.us, long string of information with my email address at the end. That's how they, part of the process to trick me into giving up my email address and password by pre-populating my email address. I don't want anything to do with it. Delete, move on. I've got one more example, I think, which is a quarantine notification. Who is it from? IT desk. Who's it really from? D. Vaughn at CPOF, something like that. Failed that test. Where is it sending me to? It wants me to allegedly release a message like it's a spam, but it's really coming from cdkglobal.com. I don't know who that is. Delete, move on. This is one that passes the first 2 tests. So who does it look like it's coming from? Amazon gift card. Somehow they spoofed Amazon.com as the who is it really coming from. I didn't do a ton of information to gather how they did that because they failed the 3rd test. When I look at where is it sending me to, it's to channelhomesales.com, a hacked website. Failed the 3rd test, delete, move on. This is just a couple of quick examples of what these fake login sites. It looks just like the Microsoft website, but if I look at the URL at the top, it's not Microsoft, it's a different website. Here's another example. This is a fake Gmail login site, which is actually coming from PacificRimPizza.com, which is a stolen, hacked website from a failed pizza joint in Hawaii. Keep going. This is one that wants to be Dropbox, Office 365, Outlook, AOL, other McAfee, anything. Just give us your email address and password. So move on from that. And yeah, sorry, we'll just keep going. So that brings us all the way back. Go ahead. To multi-factor authentication. We're back from our detail on phishing. So now I want to explain why multi-factor authentication is the killer app for most of these types of phishing attacks. Multi-factor authentication is, go ahead. So consists of 2 types of authentication. The first we're really familiar with, something your password, your first car, your grandmother's favorite color. But type 2 is something you have, something in the physical world. And that could be a USB dongle or more often now, a mobile phone. Type 3 is something you are, a fingerprint, retinal scan. If you're at a secure lab facility, you may see that. But we just need to worry about 2 types of authentication, something you know and something you have. So that could be, one of these USB dongles, but more often It is a text message now that you're getting to your phone, because you need this physical phone to receive that text message. Another type of app that we have on phones now are these authentication apps that generate these codes on the app itself without waiting for a signal. So you may also hear this called two-step authentication or OTP, one-time password. In any event, what it does is it prevents access to email or any other app, even if your password is stolen. Why? Because they only have the first type. If you type in your password to one of those fake websites that we just showed you, now the hacker has your email address and they have your password. But if they don't have this second factor, they can't get in. You could broadcast your password on the front page of the New York Times without this second factor to push through that multi-factor authentication. They can't get in. That's why it's such a powerful tool for preventing access. So that's why we recommend it for every app that you possibly can put it on. Recommended for all web applications. Okay. And SMS texting, text messaging, perfectly good. The only weakness, if you're a high profile target, you could be the victim of a different type of attack where they call Verizon and say, hi, my name is Jeff Bezos. I want you to change my text message, my phone to this other SIM card. That is a weakness. So it's generally considered that these authentication apps are a little more powerful. Keep going. Go ahead. It's not yet built into all web applications, but it is growing. So I know Office 365 includes this for free. Gmail includes this for free. LinkedIn includes this. Amazon includes this. So there's this growing list. Every bank I'm aware of now automatically enrolls your phone. So people are starting to become more familiar with this. If you don't have it turned on, especially for your email, do it today. Recommendation number 3. This kind of leads us right into password management. And so there's stolen passwords. We can read about them every day. Where do all the stolen passwords go? And this was a headline from earlier this year. Largest collection of passwords ever leaked online. 8.4 billion passwords posted to a hacker forum, also sometimes called the dark web. Here's a quick website link. You can try this out if you're curious. HaveIBeenPwned.com. You type in your email address into this website, and it'll return some results and say, oh no, your passwords have been stolen. Mine shows up in their database 7 times. And here's some examples of my personal password breaches. You can see on the far right there, cafepress.com, house.com. Okay, so what does that mean? What did I do wrong? Well, it's not what I did wrong. It's what Cafe Press and house.com did wrong. They didn't have enough security in place, and their password got stolen and posted on the dark web. Or my password got stolen and posted on the dark web. So what can I do about that? Keep going. How do we stop it? Basically, we can't. Our defense is not to pull those passwords off of the dark web or to even prevent them from getting stolen in the first place, because I have no control over these websites. And if I want to have an online digital life, I have to create usernames and passwords. My control is that I can stop the bleeding and limit the password breach to just that one password by making every password unique. So the lesson here is not to reuse passwords. How do we do that? If I've got 150 websites that I've got to manage, how do I create a unique password for each one of them? The way I do that is with a password manager software. I'm going to give a few examples of them. The first question I get is, I'm using this password manager. Is this one okay? So go ahead and click on through those. Keeper, LastPass, Dashlane, Log Me In Once, 1Password, RoboForm, Sticky Password, Zoho, McAfee, Password Boss, Chrome's password manager, Apple's password manager. They are all fine. I'm not going to really say this one's better than that, because the concept is what's really important. And they all try to use a good security to protect your email. But so here's the concept, and here's why this is such a powerful tool. So I'm going to walk through LastPass just again, not as an endorsement, it's the one that I happen to use. You have a family plan. It costs $4 a month. There is some cost associated with these. It protects everyone, including my 10-year-old son when he's online. And you can have business accounts too. The advantage of the business accounts is there's a set of passwords that are owned by the business, and then a separate set that are owned by the individual user that they can take with them if they leave or are fired. I sign up for my account. Now, this is really where the magic starts to happen. When you're selecting your username and password for this account, there's some rules you have to follow. Number one, this password has to be unique. If this password matches a password that's somewhere on the dark web, you've just kind of given away, again, the keys to the kingdom, because they can reuse that password. So this one has to be unique, not used anywhere else. Number two, should be complex, shouldn't be password or password 123. Most of these sites won't let you do that anyway. The password should be remembered. This is the keys to all this unlocks a database of all your other passwords. So you need to make it memorable, not a string of random characters that you might forget. And you should use multi-factor authentication, just like we talked about. We want to have that second factor to prevent, even if this one got stolen, that they still would be another barrier preventing access. So just to walk through an example of part of the power of these tools is their functionality, how easy they are to navigate while you're on the web. The idea is that you use a plugin when you're using a browser. It works for, so I think it works for Safari, it works for Chrome, Firefox, Edge. You install this free Chrome plugin, again, RoboForm, Zoho, they all do this the same way. You type in your email address, password, two-factor. So now you've effectively logged into this password manager through the browser. And as you're now navigating the web, you've got this little quick click at the top of your browser and lets you generate passwords. If you sign up for a new website, it's going to say, hey, it looks like you're signing up for a new website. Do you want me to remember this? What's the password you want to use? And you can auto-generate passwords that look like this on the fly, completely, effectively uncrackable, because there's no pattern to it. It's random, it's complex. You don't have to remember it. The software remembers it for you. Now, no matter what individual website gets hacked, you haven't given up the access to all of your passwords, just one. And now if you become aware of it, you can change that one password and now nothing is compromised. The other piece of this that makes them so functional is that they all have apps that go along with them. So you can synchronize your phone to your browser, to your desk, to your laptop, to your desktop, and this password manager can follow you around wherever you go in your digital life. So you always have access to this database of passwords. Bonus for LastPass is it has its own multifunction authenticator app with these rotating codes, so you can have kind of a one-stop shop for managing passwords and two-factor. All right, let's keep going. Password patch management is recommendation number 4. Just like backups, patching is not set it and forget it. So patching should be managed, not just assumed. It's critical for Windows, PC, and Mac OS. Patching is the first step when preventing viruses. And if you use a Windows PC, it looks something like this. You can check for updates button. If you are a Mac, go ahead. Looks something like this. So there's a couple of different types of patches that we want to talk about. Go ahead. So feature updates. These are the names for Mac. It's Catalina and High Sierra, things like that. For Microsoft, they're version H2H 1N. Not very exciting names, but these feature updates from Microsoft come about every 6 months. From Apple, they come every year or so. But what we're actually really mostly concerned about are security updates. They're haphazard. They come as vulnerabilities are found. There's not really a schedule. Those are the ones that you really want to keep up to date with. You do have to be a little cautious because feature updates can reduce the speed and functionality of an older computer. So you do need to keep up to date with security updates. You can hold back on some of the feature updates. Personal computers tend to last 5 to 8 years people can kind of suffer through some slower personal computers. Business computers, we typically recommend a 3 to 5 year life cycle. At some point they sort of push you into doing the feature updates. And so keeping up to date with those is relatively inevitable. And there may be security updates that are only available through feature updates. Recommendation number 5, antivirus. Go ahead. Antivirus needs to be on every computer. And this is the biggest challenge that we see with antivirus is it's on most computers, but not all. So our recommendation is that you have a method of auto deploying antivirus. This is something that we can do through our companies and our customers, maybe a little more challenging on a smaller network. So if you don't, then what you need is a reliable method to audit antivirus deployment. All the computers, get them on a spreadsheet, check them off. Does this one have antivirus? Does that one, et cetera? Most commercial antivirus is fine. I get the same question about antivirus that I get with password managers. Is the one that I'm using okay? And my advice is yes, WebRoot, ESET, Malwarebytes, Trend Micro, Kaspersky, Bitdefender, Norton, McAfee. Generally, they all do a pretty good job preventing viruses. The bigger concern that I would have is speed and manageability. I've seen WebRoot, for example, slow down a Mac. I've seen ESET slow down a PC. I've seen some functionality issues. So you would want to maybe do a trial to see if the functionality wasn't good on one, you can try another one, and sometimes you can get better productivity out of it. Most of them generally, as I said, are good at blocking viruses. And now many block bad websites as well. As you're browsing the web, they can detect a virus infected website. So layering antivirus with other antivirus, that can be problematic and that can really slow down your computer. There are other features, I'm not going to go too in detail, but EDR is one of them. That is endpoint detection and response software. There's another thing called DNS filtering that you can layer on top. And now we're starting to see application whitelisting as another feature, but two antiviruses is too much of a good thing. Getting towards the end here, cyber liability insurance. I'm not an insurance broker. There's lots of local options. You definitely want to have something in place. Typically, we recommend $1 million limit for any small business. And there's a lot of features, and you really want to have some coverage in all of these categories, because if you don't have breach response, but you do have regulatory defense, you can get caught up. So go ahead and click all the way through those. Payment card liabilities, data and network loss, business interruption loss, data recovery costs, cyber extortion loss. You want to have some coverage in basically all of these areas so that you don't get caught having one type of breach that's not covered by a different type of cyber liability insurance. Different attacks can fall under lots of different categories. Funds transfer fraud is a really common one. All right, getting towards the end, phishing training. We did some phishing training today, but what you got to do is find a way to disperse that phishing training through your entire team, which can be a little bit of a challenge, but go ahead. Educating them to identify can really reduce the attack surface. Go ahead. Adding external sender notifications on incoming mail. I don't know if you've noticed that on some of my emails. If it's coming from the outside, it says external sender. There's a little bit of value there because one of the common spoofs we see is, hey, I'm the CEO of your company. I want you to, fill out these gift cards, applications, or I want you to make a change to direct deposit. Noticing that it's an external sender, not the internal CEO, can have some effect. You really want to train your staff to spot and report phishing, or just to delete it. That's okay too. And one of the biggest scams we see, once people are inside your email through one of these hacking techniques, phishing techniques, often what they're trying to do is change a direct deposit, change an ACH number to say, don't send it to this bank in your local credit union, send it to this Malaysian online only bank account. Really common scam. So if you have a no email policy around direct deposit changes and you require a phone call, say, if you want in my company to change an ACH or direct deposit, you need to pick up the phone. to a pre-established phone number, that can stop most of the attacks that we've seen around this type of hack. You want to get out of the medium of communication. Just replying back and saying, are you really, Scott in accounting? They're going to say, yeah, I'm definitely Scott in accounting. So you want to get out of that medium and into another medium of communication. So just to recap, recommendations in order of impact to times lowest cost: backups, backup verification. That's your get out of jail free card if you get attacked. Neutralizes the ransomware attack. Multi-factor authentication, that's your get out of jail free card if you fall for a phishing scam, because it neutralizes the success of that type of attack. Password managers, those are going to be really crucial because it neutralizes the effect of a stolen password. It's not just your pet's name times your anniversary over and over and over again. Patching policy. Lots of attacks, especially around malware, are noted and prevented in new versions of the operating systems with security updates. So it really reduces your security footprint. Antivirus policy, making sure it's on every computer. We find antivirus today is very effective if it's up to date and deployed universally. Cyber liability insurance, that's in case the worst happens, that you have some kind of financial protection. One of the examples that I was just talking to a colleague about yesterday, something that happened a year or two ago in New Mexico, where someone became the victim. This happens all the time. You can be the victim of the attack if you fall for a social engineering of somebody else's cyber attack. If one of your customers gets hacked and you start having communication with a hacker because your customer got hacked, you could still fall victim to this chain of cyber attack. You want to make sure you can be made whole and not just be a victim of some kind of fraudulent wire transfer or something like that. Even if you have all of these security features in place, the social engineering aspect can still make you the victim. So having cyber liability insurance is still important, even if you do all of these things religiously. And then phishing training, especially if you have staff, you don't know what they're clicking on. So you really want to make sure that if you're following good best practices, that so your staff and your employees are following those same best practices. Some up and coming layers of protection, things that we're now seeing emerge as becoming more and more critical. One of them is third-party spam filters. So Gmail and Office 365, they have built-in spam filters. But what we're finding is these third-party filters are actually even more effective at blocking viruses and spam. And then application whitelisting, I touched on it. I think we're going to start to see this more and more in the world, especially in businesses, that your computer gets locked down and you literally cannot install a new application unless you ask IT and they bless it and say that it's a valid application. All right, and that's everything I have for today. I'm happy to hang around for a few more minutes and answer questions.
Great. Do we have any questions for Jonathan at this time?
There was a question regarding if this presentation will be sent out to attendees, and they just wanted to know.
Yes, it will be. It will be uploaded on YouTube either later today or tomorrow morning, and then it will be sent out and also in our newsletter at the beginning of November. So be on the lookout for that as well, and I'll be posting it to our social medias too.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else for Jonathan at this time?
Please feel free to ask him questions for all the things you've not thought of before, because he can answer them.
And if you think of anything after the fact, feel free to go ahead and send me a message and I will pass that along to Jonathan. I'm sure he appreciates getting in touch with you guys if you guys have any questions or are interested in consult. He is an accredited, the Study Networks is accredited with us, so you can take a look at their business profile. Otherwise, I guess we're going to go ahead and wrap this up, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Have a good day. Take care. Be safe online.